Hello and welcome to Aspen Affairs, the public affairs show from the Aspen Chamber Resort Association. I'm your host, Debbie Braun, President and CEO of the Aspen Chamber. You're watching Election 2024, Informed and Empowered, our series on this fall's election, where we highlight voter resources, share key information, and break down the issues you'll find on your ballot. You can learn more and watch all the episodes online at aspenchamber.org/elections. Today's guest is Bill Tomcich, managing partner of Air Planners, Inc. Bill is an aircraft expert and is joining us today with insights into what airplanes may serve Aspen into the future. Bill also serves on the ACRA Board of Directors. Thank you for joining us on the show today, Bill.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you know, before we got started, you and I were talking about how long we've been working together, and you and I have been working in Aspen on issues like the airport for 25 years.
25 years.
Yes, and I'd like to think in 25 years we have participated in so many public outreach. I know you were a part of the EA, I was a part of that initially, and many other groups. So I'd like to think that we've kept a really close eye on the airport, and right now where we are today is one of the most critical times in the airport's history. Would you agree?
No doubt. You know, the airport has been through a lot of changes over the last 25 years. In fact, it was 29 years ago in 1995 when I first came to town, when we had the 737 debate after Continental had pulled out of Denver International, was then Denver Stapleton Airport.
Right.
And they also pulled out all their flights from Aspen. That's one of the reasons I ended up in this town after helping develop the flight program over in the Vail Valley at the Eagle Airport.
Got it. Well, we were also reflecting on Continental used to fly in, Frontier Airlines flew in. So with all of these other airlines coming and going, how much have we really grown?
You know what? It took us almost 20 years to get back to 1993-94 levels when we had United and Continental together flying in. And then we lost literally a third of our airline seats in 1994. That's what led to the great 737 debate in 1995. And it literally took 20 years of slowly building back. We had Frontier come in 2008, as you alluded to. It was back in 2006 when we had the first aircraft transition from the BA 146s that used to be flown by Air Wisconsin for United, and that was upgraded to the CRJ 700, which still flies to this day.
Right, so this isn't really our first rodeo when we're looking at airplanes, looking at terminals, looking at runway. It's really been a hot topic for many, many years. So I just want to thank you for all the work that you've done over the years. But today we're going to talk about the fleet mix because we think that you have some really great information around that. So can you just briefly tell me about the types of airplanes that we see utilizing the Aspen Airport today, both private and commercial, and any trends that we have seen on flights or passenger volume in recent years?
Sure. Let's start on commercial
Okay.
because that's a much easier question to answer. Because today there's only one type of aircraft that is currently flying into the Aspen Airport, and that is the CRJ 700 that I mentioned was introduced here in the spring of 2006. And that is flown by SkyWest Airlines for all three of their airline partners, American, Delta, and United. That is the only aircraft, commercial aircraft, still flying here today. We talked about Frontier that flew some Q400s, the Dash 8 Q400 turboprop.
Yeah.
That flew in successfully from 2008 until 2012 when Frontier pulled out. And then Republic actually operated some Q400s for United Express for a couple of years. But since 2016, it has been exclusively the CRJ 700. On the private side, we have a wide variety of different aircraft. I'm not even going to go into them all at this time. But the largest one, the design aircraft for this airport, is the Gulfstream G550. And that is configured for 19 passengers. And that is a relatively newer generation aircraft. We still have some older generation aircraft, which are actually some of the noisiest aircraft that fly in and out of this airport.
Great. That is, I think a lot of the debate is what's going on the private side versus what's going on the commercial side, but they're so interrelated. While the election measures this fall are asking the voters who should have the final say on the runway and renovation, what they're really effectively asking is if the public supports the airport layout plan submitted to the FAA this spring. Can you explain what is in the plan that's different than what we sort of have now. Specifically, what might change about the airplanes and the airport experience?
Sure. So the airport layout plan is simply calling for the runway to be rebuilt, which it must be. We know that the runway is deteriorating. And in order to be eligible for FAA funding, I'm sure Dan's going to be speaking about this in an upcoming episode.
Yes.
But in order to be eligible for FAA funding, it needs to be built to their current safety standards. Right now, the airport is operating under a modification of standards, which restricts aircraft to a 95-foot wingspan. And what's being asked by the voters, essentially, is to reaffirm the Board of County Commissioners' power to make these decisions as elected officials. And this is something we had quite a colorful discussion at this morning's ACRA board meeting.
Right, we sure did. So we know what airplanes could theoretically land on a new runway, but I think the better question is what airplanes will. What can you tell us about plans from commercial carriers for airplanes? What are they going to use in Aspen?
The Aspen Airport has been a 70-passenger market since 2006, and the airlines largely view this as a 70-passenger market moving forward. The CRJ 700s are getting a bit long in the tooth, and they're not going to continue flying forever. And we know there is a replacement plan now that has actually been recently revealed by both SkyWest and United. Starting this December, they're going to be replaced with the Embraer E175, which many people have probably flown in, but not in and out of the Aspen Airport. But the plan is to introduce that aircraft on select United routes, especially Denver, starting on December 3rd of this year. And it's essentially going to be the same capacity aircraft, 70 seats, as what the CRJ 700 has had, but it's a newer aircraft with new avionics, better technology. It's expected to be more reliable because it'll be able to take advantage of satellite-based navigation. And from the passenger experience, in addition to likely being more reliable, it's also going to have larger seats, full-size overhead bins, so you don't have to gate check your ski boots, for example. It's going to be a substantial upgrade to those passengers. So largely, we expect the current generation of 70-passenger regional jets to be replaced with newer generation jets. But to answer your question, the increased runway width and the increased runway taxiway separation would technically bring this airport into design category 3 standards, which would allow wingspans of up to 118 feet to operate at the Aspen Airport. And that's what a lot of folks in this community seem to be very concerned about, is that it could bring in bigger planes. And the reality is the reasons for these runway improvements and rebuilding the runway is not to bring in bigger airplanes. It's really to increase the level of safety and to bring it into compliance with the FAA's current safety standards.
You brought forward two good issues here, because we just went ahead and surveyed the membership, and over 120 people replied back to the survey, and the number one concern was safety.
Sure.
Second place was reliability of service. You really need that reliability when you're catching, other flights in and out, and if that's a resident or a tourist. And then the third was the economy. So really businesses are prioritizing safety and reliability of service over the economy. And I thought that really stood out to me when I was looking at those results. What about the private airplanes? Like you were saying, they're being developed. What is being developed or used elsewhere that we don't see in Aspen now, but may in the future? And what are the characteristics of these airplanes?
There's a whole fleet of aircraft, either by Gulfstream, Bombardier, and also one that's not in service yet from Dassault, that are slightly larger. Most noticeably is they have longer wingspans because they've got extended wingtips. But they are all configured to carry no more than 19 passengers. Whichever aircraft you look at, whether you're looking at the Gulfstream G650, the G700, the G800, or the Bombardier Global 7500 or 8000, and I mentioned the Dassault 10X. What they all have in common is every one of them are powered by newer engines that are quieter, and they have more sophisticated wings that are that slice through the air a lot more efficiently and don't require as much fuel, and that's why they can travel so much farther distances. And aircraft noise really comes from two sources. It comes from the airflow over the airframe itself and the wings, and it comes from the engines. And these new wings are actually quieter in terms of the airflow perspective. And of course, the engine technology is getting better and better with every new generation of aircraft. So the bottom line on the private aircraft is the only larger private aircraft that are expected to come in here are all going to be quieter and more fuel efficient.
Well, that actually sounds pretty good. We've been chatting about some of the future fleet predictions and should the runway be repaired and realigned to FAA standards. Let's talk about the alternatives. If that doesn't happen, what type of air service can we anticipate in the years as the years go by? Is there a threat of decreased commercial air service?
There is certainly a risk, and we're really not sure what specifically is going to happen, but the FAA has become increasingly clear that they're adamant about safety and preserving a certain standard of safety, and they are also working on getting rid of all the modifications of standards that currently exist, including the 95-foot wingspan restriction. So regardless of what happens, the outcome of this upcoming election, we are expecting that the modification of standards is going to go away either way, which will open the doors to some larger aircraft that we talked a little bit about so far.
But on the private side?
On the private side, and also there is one aircraft we haven't talked about on the commercial side that I do expect will probably fly in here. I said it's going to be predominantly a 70-passenger market, but there's the Airbus A220-100, which Delta currently flies out of Salt Lake City, and they configure it for 109 seats, and that is the quietest commercial airliner flying in the United States today. In fact, there's another very noise-sensitive airport in Southern California, the John Wayne Airport. Right. Delta recently introduced that aircraft there, and the mayor of the city of Newport Beach, which lies right in the departure path, actually wrote a letter to the senior VP of Delta Airlines thanking them for bringing in this new aircraft because it's so noticeably quieter to the residents and less impactful. The quote that they said is, "This is cause for celebration in our community."
Wow, it does seem like there's a lot of fear-based going on both sides of this. The groups that are pro and against the airport remodel. It seems like there's a lot of rhetoric out there. Are all these threats true, or is it election season and everything's heightened right now?
I think you just put that well. I think there's some exaggerations on both sides.
Yeah.
You know, the ads you see from CABP, Citizens Against Bigger Planes, that show old, dirty 737s, those aren't ever going to fly into the Aspen Airport. There's just no physical way those larger variants of the 737 would even be considered. And even the smallest versions, we do have an occasional private aircraft that has made actually 6 visits to the Aspen Airport in the month of July. It's a private configuration of an old 737-500. Hardly anybody really notices when those aircraft come in, but it's not going to open the door to new Boeing business jets, which are actually now really old, like a lot of folks fear. I think what we're really going to see is predominantly 70-passenger aircraft moving forward with newer generation aircraft like United and SkyWest are planning to introduce starting this December. And maybe a select number of these newer, quieter, larger aircraft, which will actually be it'd be the largest thing we could possibly do to reduce passenger emissions is introduce some of these next generation aircraft. And that's what a lot of the proponents of the airport measures are arguing in favor of, including through the entire ASE vision process. But I would argue that, you know, even if we see a handful of flights in the A220 configuration flying in here in the future, it'll move the needle a little bit, but not substantially in terms of reducing carbon emissions per passenger.
Yeah, I think as we move through this conversation, I'm hearing and feeling a lot of fear. And it would be really great if we could just reconfigure the fear into inspiration about what could be in the next 20 years at our airport, a new terminal, a safer, a more reliable airport. So I'm hoping that we get inspired along the way and not just continue to be fear-based in our decision making. Bill, is there any other, like you've been a part of this conversation for so long, are there any other common misconceptions or confusion that you're still like, I can't believe people think that still? Or do you think people are doing a good enough job getting the info out?
I think people are doing a better job of getting the info out, but as I just mentioned, you know, there are two extremes on this, on both sides of this particular debate, and I really think it's going to be more right down the middle, you know, moving forward. 70-seaters are exactly what the airlines want to fly into this airport. United and SkyWest are heavily invested in the Embraer E175. I am certain you're going to see some fleet transitions with both American and Delta in the not-too-distant future as well, depending on what type of aircraft will be allowed to fly in here. And I don't think you're going to see a dramatic change in either direction.
You know, when 70 people come in, usually 70 people go out as well, so it works in both directions. Fleet mix. We've been talking about it here today. Bill is the expert in fleet mix. We have plenty of information on our website, but thank you for watching this episode of Aspen Affairs Election 2024, Informed and Empowered. I'm Debbie Braun, President and CEO of the Aspen Chamber Resort Association. You can watch all the episodes we'll be producing, learn more about the local elections, and check on your voter registration online at aspenchamber.org/elections. Thanks to GrassRoots TV for their support. Until next time, stay informed and make your voice count. Thank you.